Okay. So we were learning yesterday the prohibition of going to secular courts, and we saw that there's a machlokes as to whether this is an Isser de Oraisa or an Isser de Rabbanan. And the last thing that we saw is that the Tashbates writes that it's even virtuous if the Gentile is willing to go to a Beis Din. If you have a litigation with a Gentile and he's willing to go to Beis Din, then that would actually be a virtuous thing to do. Okay, now we're up to this paragraph. Umavor b'chazanish u'b'shut yabia omer, the 20th century poskim, the Chazanish and the Rav Ovadia say, De'ein hevdel im balifnei dayanim goyim uvein dayanei Yisrael sheshoftim al pi chukei hagoyim. There's no difference whether you go to Gentile judges or you go to Jewish judges who rule based on secular law. And furthermore, it's wrong what the Jewish judges are doing. And in a certain sense, it's even worse because what they're doing is forsaking the Torah law and giving preference to secular law. That's not so clear because there are many times where a contract may be drawn up based on secular law, and that the foundation of the agreement between the two parties was based on Canadian law. And now one of the parties says, I want to go to a Beis Din in the hope that, maybe the evidentiary requirements and things like that in a Beis Din are higher than what Canadian law requires. And yet, just remember, just like we learned when we were learning in the Imrei Yaakov, the laws of shtaros, the laws of contracts. Sometimes in Jewish law, the requirement of a kosher contract is greater than the law of a secular contract. But a Beis Din will still rely on secular standards of what a contract says, based on the fact that when two people entered into a contract, it was under that understanding. So you shouldn't take this a little bit with a grain of salt that it's wrong for a Beis Din to rule based on secular law, because many times there's a tacit understanding between two parties that they enter into an agreement based on Dina de Malchusa. Okay. Now, ule'inyan misha hipsid b'dini erkos ve'achar kach rotze ladun b'din Torah. Now, I've personal experience with this, and this is a really interesting situation. A person went to court, sued his friend, lost. He says, we're from Jews, we should go to a Beis Din. after he lost the case. Yeah, I've decided that I really did the wrong thing, and I've done tshuva, and now I want to go to a Beis Din. Yeah, well, of course, yeah. So kosav harama she'ein niskaken lo od b'din Torah kaven shaholach tchila le'erkos. So the Rama writes something very sensible, and that is the Beis Din does not acquiesce to that request. The Beis Din will not accept a person who is two-faced. And now the situation that I was involved in, and I'm not saying that I have extensive experience with Batei Din, but I have enough experience to know some of the games that people play. Many years ago, I was a trustee on an estate. I think I may have mentioned this in a previous discussion. And the reason why I was a trustee on an estate is because a man in the community passed away, and he had no heirs, he had no children, and so therefore the bulk of his estate was being given to various charities. And another charity, a local charity that was named in the documents for a very small percentage of his estate, came forward with promissory notes, very suspicious promissory notes that no one knew about, that they alleged had been signed shortly before he passed away, for an amount that would have been, let's say, 60 or 70% of the entire estate. And so they presented these and they said that, this is ours. We expect for the trustees to honor these promissory notes. And we said, no, under advice of the lawyer for the estate, we are not going to honor these promissory notes. There is no evidentiary basis for these because we never received any instructions about this. And the lawyer for the estate, who had been constantly in touch with the decedent before he passed away, was never instructed about these notes. So either these were signed under duress or these are forgeries, which is shocking, that an Orthodox Jewish charity could even conceive of doing such a thing. Okay, so so they sued us in secular court. And after a few months of proceedings, they saw that they were losing. They saw that they were not finding favor in the judge's eyes, and that things were not going well. And we were spending a lot of money on very good lawyers, the trustees. So they decided to tell us that, we really need to do the right thing. And let's pull this out because we initially told them, let's go to Beis Din. If you feel that you're right, then take us to Beis Din. Send us a hazmana. We'll come to Beis Din. They said, no, we're going to take you to court. They saw that they were losing, and then they said we should really go to Beis Din. And so the question that we had to present to our posek, because I had chosen a posek, Rav Chaim Cohen, who's a very, very respected posek in many areas, but especially in Choshen Mishpat. I asked him, what should we do? He said, according to this halacha that we're just quoting, you are not obligated to go to Beis Din. But because there are so many yeshivas involved in this case, go to Beis Din anyway. I'm confident that you're going to prevail, and go to Beis Din anyway, and that way you'll make a Kiddush Hashem. So we did, and we prevailed. Yeah, we went above and beyond. And not only did the Beis Din find in our favor, but after the forensic evidence was presented that these were, in all likelihood, forgeries, the Beis Din also awarded us court fees and other stuff. Yeah. I believe we sued them for court, for secular court fees, and for the Beis Din fees as well. They awarded us. So they lost big time, and it changed me, that experience, in many ways. So if you ever see me being a little bit cynical about just because people are from does not mean that they are going to be always doing the right thing. And even though these people that were part of this charity, I really genuinely believe that they wanted to help the Jewish people with the money that they were going to be getting, and a lot of times, just because someone wants to do the right thing does not mean that the way that they're going to get to that objective is going to be through honest and ethical means. Yeah, sometimes the cause takes over. And when you're doing God's work, there's even more often sometimes the sort of the Yetzer Hara can take over and tell you that you are justified in doing whatever it takes, even if it means, let's say, character assassination, or or even in this case, committing acts of perjury and forgery in order to be able to achieve the greater good. So just be aware of that as you go through life. I mean, I'm speaking to my contemporaries. I'm sure you have your own experiences as well, but it's something that needs to be passed on to other people as well. You missed a really good story, Warren, but anyway, You'll have to catch. You'll have to catch. You have to catch the tail end of it. So Ron, the fact of the matter is that it's even more. You have to understand, people like myself, rabbis, who commit their lives to helping the Jewish people and to doing the right thing and to trying to raise the prestige of Torah. You get a God complex sometimes that makes you feel that anything that you do is holy. Anything that you do is holy, as long as it's for that objective. And therefore, people will be able to justify a lot of different things. And I've seen it regularly. I've seen it in every community that I've lived in. Because human beings are human beings. And that's why invariably, when politics combines with religion, it's not that politics are elevated, but it's religion that is degraded. That's invariably what happens. And that's why, it's probably better for there to be a separation of church and state in certain ways, even in the state of Israel, even though that's not a very popular opinion. But, look, and you see it's not just the Jews, it's, look at what the Islamic world is doing. Look how they're able to justify all manner of, savage behavior. And for the sake of God. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But look how much blood has been spilled in the name of religion. Okay, so, all right. No, on that happy note, no, I was just thinking of a line from George Carlin. I love, something like, I love God so much, I'm going to kill you for it. Something like, I don't remember exactly the line. But anyway, so because of Hatumim, Shnei Ta'amim Lazeh. So the Tumim, Rav Yonasan Eibeshitz gives us two reasons why, if a person started off in secular court and he lost the case. Now, the truth is, it's not even if he lost the case, but even if he even started in secular court and now wants to move it to Beis Din, the Beis Din does not have to accommodate him. So there are two reasons. First of all, is because he already accepted from the secular court that whatever they would paskin, he would accept. And the second reason is because this is a penalty to him. You went to secular court, and now you want to become the tzaddik and take your case to the Beis Din. Nothing doing. We penalize you. We shun you because you did something that you weren't supposed to do. The Nesivos says it's really the second reason is the more correct reason. And he goes into this very long discussion about some of the details of this halacha, and there are different opinions, but this is the accepted rule. Uleinya nitva shahofia litvia be'erkos. So he says, now let's say a person is a nitva, which means he's the counterclaimant. In other words, a guy has taken him to Beis Din, shahovia litvia be'erkos, that he brings his case to secular court. V'nihel et hagana shelo k'dei latzeit zakai v'lo bikesh me'hatoveya ladun b'din Torah v'yetzei chayev b'dinehem u'la'achar shehitchayev hanitva ratza shuv ladun b'fnei Beis Din. I'm not really sure I understand the case. Nitva shehofia litvia be'erkos. He shows up to the secular court. V'nihel et hagana shelo k'dei latzeit zakai, and he basically is able to defend his case and is able to find favor in the eyes of the secular court. Velo bikesh me hatoveya ladun bedin Torah. So he says, so here's the question. The question is, the Toveya took him to secular court. He loses in secular court, but never said to the Toveya, what are you doing? You should take me to Beis Din. He basically went along with getting, he got sued by a fellow Jew, and he loses the case in secular court, and now he wants to take the guy that he lost to Beis Din after the fact. Yeah, he says, you had no right to take me to secular court. I lost, and apparently he accepted it. In other words, he didn't raise any protest at the time. So he lost in secular court. And now he says, I want to take you to Beis Din, right? So apparently, like, the issue here is both of them behaved badly, because the guy who was sued and lost never raised a protest. He should have protested at the time, but it's only after the fact that he protests. So the question is, since he didn't initiate the litigation in secular courts, would the Beis Din accommodate his request for a hearing? Right. That's right. Right. So this is the question now. So Kosav B'shut Maharsham Al Pichuvas Hatashbeitz, the Kaven Shaholach Tchila Ladun Be'erkos V'yatsa Chayev Hareze Kilu Kibel Alav Hadin Ha'erkos. So he says, no. The fact that you went willingly to court with the claimant and you lost, it's as if you've already accepted the ruling of the secular court. V'din ha'nitzvah k'din ha'toveya v'tam echad l'shnei. And therefore, the law applies to both of you. The fact that you didn't raise any protest at the time means that you've already accepted the ruling of the secular court and you have no rights to go to Beis Din. That's right. That's right. I guess the right thing to do would be is to, let's say, from guy A sues from guy B. From guy B, at the moment that he receives being served, immediately sends off an email to the Beis Din and says, I've just been served by so-and-so, from guy A, and I want to take him to Beis Din. Please send him a counter hazmana to Beis Din so that we can resolve this in Beis Din.
Stay in civil action, all the parties to go to Beis Din.
Really?
Based on the arbitration agreement. They can enforce the arbitration agreement, stay in the civil action.
I see. I see.
As they agreed to do.
Right. In other words, let's say two guys enter into a contractual partnership, and it says in the contract, should there be any conflict, we will go to an arbitration Beis Din.
Or just enforcing the contract.
Right. Right. Okay. And he says, so even though the nitva, the person who was sued, really only went to court in order to save himself because he had no other option. Like, in other words, if he wouldn't show up, the court would just automatically rule in favor of the claimant. But because he didn't say expressly to the claimant, let's go to a din Torah, it's clear that his intention was to go to secular court and have it out. Kaven shegam hanitva nitratza bazeh umachal al zechuso. And since he did not raise any protest, and the ruling is now over, you cannot obligate the claimant to now go to Beis Din, which is a really interesting thing because the claimant himself did the wrong thing. Like he should have gone to Beis Din also. In other words, why didn't the claimant take his fellow to Beis Din? Okay, so there's a lot more to discuss in this area, but I think that, well, let me just see. Instead of starting a new tshuva, let's just take a look at the footnote over here. He says, "Va'od ayin b'shut maharsham sham b'maftechos ma'ashekasa b'shem talmidei achsam soifer be'inyan zeh." He says, I refer you to the shut maharsham, what he quotes from the students of the Chasam Sofer. Amnam ayin b'shut maharshag the mitchila kasav kedivrei hamarsham. Amnam shuv kasav the kevin shedin zehu mitam knas yesh liknos davkas hatoveya below hanitzvah. But he gives a counter argument. The counter argument that he gives is, remember, the whole reason why the Beis Din will not hear the case is to penalize the person who went to secular court. Well, person who went to secular court, or so who initiated the secular court proceeding, was the toveya, was the claimant, not the not the plaintiff, not the defendant. It was the plaintiff, the toveya, who should be penalized. The defendant should not be penalized. Kevin shahaya bahul lahashiv, because maybe he could argue, well, what was I supposed to do? I get this summons, I got to show up to court. I was all upset, so I just went, right? V'gam yeshlo, and furthermore, taina sheyachol lomar sheya batuach shahatovei lo haya mitratzeh ladun beveis din kevin shekvar tavo be'arkos. And furthermore, he wants to argue the safer that the reason the defendant has a very good reason why he didn't protest right away. He says the fact that this guy is taking me to secular court is indicative of the fact that there's no way he's going to go to Beis Din. So therefore, and therefore he wants to argue, contrary to the Maharsham, that the Beis Din, if the defendant loses and he wants to reopen the case in Beis Din, he would have the right to do so. Va'od ayin be'imrei bina shekasa b'shem rabbanon kshishoy k'divrei Maharsham because of lachlok aleim ayin sham. And this other sefer also takes issue with the Maharsham. V'nira shehakol lefi ra'os einei hadayanim. And he concludes, therefore, that it seems to me, says Rav Sharaga, that it really should be according to the estimation of the Beis Din. Ki pa'amim hanitzva yochol liton shehu rotza lodun bebeis din rak mipnei shehu mitchameik mishalem afal pi shekibel al atzmo dini ha'arkos uchadome. He says there are times when the Beis Din will come to the recognition that that he really wanted to adjudicate their differences in Beis Din, and it's only because mipnei shehu mitchameik Shalem, I'm not sure what that means. What is the word? I know that word. Just give me 1 second. Oh, right. He's avoid mitchamek mishalem. It's just because he's avoiding paying. He says, I really did want to go to Beis Din, but I didn't want to have to pay an additional cost of going to Beis Din. So he says, in other words, on the one hand, it could be that the Dayanim have to really see what the true motivation of the defendant is who lost in secular court. If it's because he's just trying to avoid paying what the court ordered him to, so then the Beis Din should not attend to his request. But there are going to be other times where maybe he really does have a legitimate argument that he really wanted to go to Beis Din. He was just, everything happened so quickly, and he didn't have an opportunity. He didn't realize it was an option, or he didn't think that this guy would ever go to Beis Din. And now he realizes that he's got high standing. Look, I know of cases here in our own community where one from Jew took another from Jew to secular court, and this guy is paraded and lauded as a very, very, like a paragon of the from community, you know. And maybe he sues, let's say, a guy who's, conservadox or whatever, and he didn't realize that this other guy that took him to court was so much a part of the really, really from community. And so he thought, he didn't realize that Beis Din was an option. So then someone tells him, hey, I'm surprised that so-and-so took you to secular court. He davens at such and such a shul, and, he really should have taken you to Beis Din. And the guy only afterwards realizes, I think I've just been bamboozled by a guy, right? So it could be that in that kind of situation, the Beis Din might say, you know what, this guy's right. He just wasn't smart enough, or he just wasn't well versed enough in the ways of the from community to know that this guy was doing something devious. V'hinei midivrei hamarsham shelo nizkakim lanitva achar shehalach ladun be'arkos b'li levakesh ladun bebeis din mashma sha'afi markos chiyavuhu l'shalem yoter mima shetzorech al pi din Torah u'chayev l'shalem zos. It seems like from the Maharsham that once a guy goes to secular court, then even if the secular court obligates him to pay more than what he would have had to pay if he had gone to Beis Din, that's his obligation. If he says, but, in other words, I'm sorry, according to the Maharsham, even when the defendant agreed to go to Beis Din, the Beis Din does not acquiesce to his request to retry it in Beis Din. What happens if the court obligates him to pay more than what he would have had to pay in Beis Din? Isn't the Toveya essentially stealing from him? Why doesn't the Beis Din try to have justice served? In other words, the court tacks on additional penalties that would never have existed according to Torah law if he had gone to Beis Din. Why shouldn't the Beis Din try to create justice in that situation? And the answer is because once the defendant accepted to go to secular court, he tacitly accepted whatever that court would rule. And so it's not any more gezel. Amnam ein b'nesivas shekasav shagam b'toveya shemuter lo litva be'arkos neged nitva shelo tzayis dina b'kol makom also lo lakachas kesef shelo magia lo al pi din Torah. So he says, but the Nesiva says something really interesting. Let's say I try to take a guy to Beis Din and he refuses to go. So I get permission to take him to secular court. And in secular court, the court awards me much more than I would have been entitled to get had we gone to Beis Din. So the Nesiva says a huge chiddush. He says, you're not allowed to take more from the guy than what the Beis Din would have awarded you. Even though the court awarded you, let's say, punitive awards that far exceed what the Beis Din would have given you. And you have to ask the Beis Din, what are you allowed to collect? It sounds like, according to him, that there hasn't been this tacit acceptance that whatever the Beis Din rules, we will go by. The secular court rules by, we will go. And therefore, it seems like, at least according to the Nesivos, there may be an issue of theft. I don't think anyone paskins that way. I think that the prevailing psak is like the Maharsham says, that once a person refuses to go to Beis Din, There's no double jeopardy. And even if he loses more than he would have lost in Beis Din, that's the ruling, and everyone has to live with it. So we'll hold it here for today.